government and private institution to a table, and one of the agendas during those congresses is at that level of the board that we have, especially the board committee members that are handling ICT members, focusing on that one area of inclusive communication and being able to support policies that comes to them in approval, and of course ensuring that they also allocated some funds to spearhead the implementation. As you know, many of us in the past have taken disability as another, not a co-priority in our programs. But if we can be able to have a policy in place, then I think this discussion will be among the priority areas that are within the priority discussion in this institution. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope we'll be able to share, especially in the breakout session, so that we at least come up with something for all of us. Thank you, Honorable Dr. Mwaura, for this opportunity to speak, and the rest of us for listening. Asante sana.
We wish you a quick recovery, and if you don't, please, may you humbly register. The National Council is issuing temporary papers called cards. They should be graduated to some pieces of plastic that we can swipe. I hope there should be some money there in the spirit of tax exemption. Now, can we have Mr. Okwach Maurice from the Kenya National Association of the Deaf? Tumpigia makofi ile ya deaf. You know how we clap the deaf way? Yes, like this. Those who don't know now, you know.
Good morning, all. Thank you very much, Honorable Isaac and Dr. Kaboy. All protocols observed. I am happy to be in this meeting and to talk about challenges of deaf communication in accessibility. The deaf people have a lot of challenges in accessibility, which are barriers like in the hospitals. There are no interpreters in different areas, and accessibility to public hospital is a challenge because there are no interpreters, and sometimes there's wrong communication, wrong medication, and it has been that throughout the past. And there's no action going forward. And also in government public places, there's limited accessibility for deaf people. When deaf people, you have to bring your own interpreter, and you have to pay double fare for yourself and for the interpreter to go and help you in public spaces. In other areas, how to have a solution for that, the government should have trained interpreters in all public spaces so that it can be easy accessibility for deaf people. Also in job opportunities, sometimes we need interpreters for us to be able to work in government employment. That is wrong because we are not given interpreters to help in communication, so we have big challenges. The important thing is when you go to an office, you should have a person in the government office for easy accessibility so that deaf communication can be right. Also in police station, when you go to the police station as a deaf person, there are no interpreters. You can be arrested for something which is wrong, or you have to call an interpreter to come from so far. And sometimes also there is miscommunication, so we get stuck. Another challenge, they have been gone for so long, we are fighting, but there still is no accessibility. Also on the television, the interpreter space is too small, and seeing that is very hard. So sometimes you even miss the interpretation on the TV. They should add a big screen so that it's easy for the deaf people to understand communication on the TV. So we are stuck like in all spaces, and we need accessibility in different areas. Also, when you go out to village hospitals, deaf people get stuck because of signing issues. Accessibility is a big problem, a big challenge for the deaf. So what deaf people is to be offered interpreters in all spaces. Like now, here in this space, we have interpreters, so it's easy for us to access communication. And sometimes, how we can solve these challenges is to train many interpreters, to train teachers in different areas so that everywhere can be more accessible. Thank you very much.
You can hear the conflict. So we do, in an inclusive manner, we do both. Let's do it again. Yeah, that way. That way you include everyone. I think that's very powerful to hear that deaf people, persons who are deaf, pay double fare. The screen is small, because what about if you are deaf-blind or you're visually impaired? So some of the issues are coming up, and as Nelson Mandela said, if you climb one hill, you realize there are several others to climb. So I think with that, I would want to now call the biggest telco. Telco means telecommunication company in East and Central Africa, the head of diversity and inclusion, Our Lady Tabi Kioko. Tabi has been with us for a long time. And the last time I saw her was when we were in New York at the CRPD Conference of State Parties last year in June. She's been very busy, and I think there are engagements around the Global Disability Summit in Germany. I think I saw the CEO was supposed to speak or something like that recently when I was in Geneva. So I think Safaricom has done a lot in terms of employing persons with disabilities of various categories, and also in harnessing their services to be inclusive of the needs of persons with disabilities. And I believe that it is very important to have diversity and inclusion. We are not very amused by seeing what is happening in America. I think there has been anti-DIY programs, but we believe that we shall hold forth and show to the world that indeed it is important to include those of us who have different orientations, especially when it comes to disability, because it is both as a result of impairments that could be congenital or otherwise, but also the built environment. So with many remarks, let's clap for Tabi as she comes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Isaac Maura, Government Spokesman. Allow me to ride on the protocol that have gone before. Greetings, all in the room, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I thought you had breakfast. Good morning. As you've heard, I work for Safaricom. I'm the chapter lead, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And for Safaricom, we ensure that whatever we do, we try as much as possible, because we know that inclusion is a journey, isn't it? Right? It is a journey that keeps evolving and new needs emerging. So you have to keep addressing and finding interventions in order to stay relevant. So our purpose is transforming lives. And when you dig down that statement of transforming life, it means that we have to transform lives at every touch point, yeah, of our business engagements. As Honorable has mentioned, we are a big supporter in terms of economic empowerment. We have currently employed over 206 persons with various disabilities across the business, which contributes to about 3.5%. Please clap. I can hear those claps going. Yeah, this is a journey that we have been very intentional. We always say that diversity is a fact, but what is inclusion? Is an act, right? Ni kazi. It just doesn't happen by luck. So we have been very intentional at Safaricom to ensure that we are inclusive, even within our workforce, and to ensure that we adhere to what we say we are, that we are an equal opportunity employer, we are an inclusive organization, and therefore, how do we bring that to life is by making sure that all our actions actually can be seen, yeah, to support what we say we are. I think one of the greatest barriers for persons with disabilities is accessibility. And accessibility, whether it's in-built environment or the digital accessibility. But communication is actually one of the foundational pillars of inclusion. You cannot say you're inclusive if communication is lacking. Yeah, and we will look, during the day at the various forms of communication, because we know we have different persons with different disabilities, and therefore you have to bring in equity. Equity is about bridging the gap so that everyone is at a level playing field. So finding those middle points where your communication speaks to everyone, addresses everyone's concerns, and that is a task that I don't think anyone has achieved 100%, but it is work in progress, even for Safaricom. So for us, we actually have 4 pillars. When we talk about the DEI culture, we have the language, and this, speaks to things like how do you involve different persons, like the deaf that we've seen, right? How do we ensure that persons with, who are deaf are not left behind, yeah? And that has necessitated, because we are a customer that is externally facing, that we are an organization that, is external and internal facing, and therefore, when we address our customers, we are not just addressing one set of customers, but we are cognizant of the fact that persons with various disabilities are part of those customers. And therefore, we began, and I'll speak later more about that, we began to walk a journey of ensuring that 2 people in every of our outlets, yeah, can do sign language interpretation. But we see over time, when we did the audit last a few weeks ago, we realized because talent is fluid, yeah? People keep moving and relocating. Some of the spaces have been left without a proper sign language interpreter. And that is something that we are working on. And as a result of that, we have now, last December, during the International Day of Persons with Disabilities, formed a sign language club for staff, because we want people to be very cognizant that, you know, communication has to be embedded in everything that we do. The second pillar is symbols. You know, when you have different symbols, you're also communicating. So it's very important for us, even as we look at communication, over and above looking at the language we are using and the various things, let us look at all the other things that form part of that communication. So symbols are some of them. Rituals are the third pillar. What do I mean by rituals? Rituals means, what are the activities in your program that are, you know, that must continue to support the inclusion agenda? Yeah, these are like disability mainstreaming. Those are things that should continue, right? So those should not stop. Yeah, because you have more and more people coming into that space, and you need to ensure that everybody speaks the same language. So what are those programs that you've lined up as an organization to continue to support and to solidify disability inclusion? And then the last one is, how do we tell our stories in a form, in the content that everyone, gets reached? Yeah? How do we tell our stories? Yeah, whether it's the language, whether it's the medium, the channels that we use, how do we tell the stories of what we are doing or what's happening? So those are some of the things that we pick up as an organization, and to try to double click just to ensure that we put interventions to ensure that we don't leave anyone behind. So I know we as Safaricom, we are leveraging a technology to make sure that we bridge the gap and, eliminate some of the barriers to communication. And we are very deliberate at saying that we are connecting people to people, people to information, and people to opportunities. And that is, a critical statement for us to adhere to. So I want to just finish by saying technology is one of the things that we can leverage on to ensure that we minimize or we remove barriers to communication, because communication makes life easier for all of us. But for persons with disabilities, technology makes things possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Makofi tena. You are still not doing the deaf way. You start with so Makofi tena. Thank you very much, Madam Toby Kioko, for such an elaborate communication on how we can effectively communicate to persons with disabilities. And it's very important to hear that you have a KSL, club. That's a very good way of doing things. And I want to say that we are doing very well. We are coming to the close of our remarks. And before I invite the next speaker, let me say that inclusive communication is extremely dear to all of us, because if you are not well communicated for, it means that then you don't get opportunities. A very simple example is yesterday we were going for the Requiem Mass of Miriam Opondo, and we had been told that it was going to start at 2 p.m., but then it was moved to 12. So some of us were arriving when it was ending, so that tells you how communication is important. Many times, even in personal issues, when you hear a husband and a wife has marital problems, the number one challenge is always communication. When it comes to young people like Siokao here, or maybe not herself particularly, but who may be looking for a job, like Owino, I am happy that you're now working in Kedipa. Many of these adverts do not reach persons with disabilities, and that therefore means they don't have information. And it also goes all of the way to language. If you compare the English language vis-a-vis the French language, you realize that English language is far much more rich than the French language, by far, by the way. And you can see that sometimes when you have with the French and English speakers, sometimes the concepts around English are more elaborate. And so that tells you it's not just a one-off. It goes all of the way to the creation of a body of knowledge. And when you have information, then you possess the world. Those who can communicate better end up becoming great leaders, and they are able to be the first amongst equals, possibly. And you can even see recently the whole issue of Elon Musk and having the power of X, and now even almost looking like a co-president in America. You can all agree with me on that one. So, well, we were talking about it, about the rise of oligarchs and what that means. But those people who are in information and communication are actually the ones making the most money, So we cannot afford, therefore, to leave persons with disabilities behind simply because of limited abilities when it comes to the issue of, impairment. That we cannot do so, because sometimes when you're not able to effectively communicate, people tend to think you have less capacity, even in terms of intelligence. And I've seen this with people who are growing older and therefore losing their ability to hear, because you have to shout a little bit more because maybe they're becoming hard of hearing. People tend to think they have also lost their thinking ability. At the same time, you find people with developmental disabilities who really have a lot of capacity, but because we don't know how to communicate with them, we assume they don't know as much. For me, of late, I've been looking at the issue of people who have dyslexia. Beg your pardon. The challenge that they have around, reading and concentration, but it doesn't impair their intelligence. There are people who are deafblind at the same time, people who have intellectual disability. And I'm very happy because we have done very well as a movement in having self-advocates. So there's a lot that we can do, that the more we have inclusive communication, the more we are actually unlocking the potential of persons with disabilities to participate on an equal basis with others, and therefore make meaningful contributions in society. I was very, very impressed finding a young 23-year-old lady called Sarah, who is Sarah Kane, who is doing a PhD in astronomy and geophysics, I think, in Cambridge, a young lady with albinism who is almost totally blind, actually. That tells you it is possible. We also know about people like Steve Hawking. So what are we trying to say? We also know about people like Helen Keller. We can do a lot more, and I'm happy that there are new technologies other than the traditional ones. Recently, I saw a conversation at the alumni group of Thika High School for the Blind. Someone was trying to sell a Perkins braille at Kenya shillings 85,000. And then another one answered, no, you don't need that one. With a laptop of about 40,000, you can do much more. So there's that gap. Because then when we have that conversation around assistive technology, we will be able to also lower the costs in terms of the numbers. We'll be able to ensure that the pen and paper for a person with disability is not as costly. That we'll be able to ensure that we have good guidelines that speak to the idea that it needs to be so well, ensconced in the universal design to the extent that the costs then come down. So that then my friend Okoachia cannot have to go all of the places with his sign language interpreter, And so that way, we have a challenge. We have a challenge because sometimes we feel like when we are doing these things, they are really meant for our own personal comfort. No, they are not. It's just to ensure that we bring out the human experience in a more powerful way. So as government, we are very keen, first and foremost, because there has been a general challenge of communication, to improve on how we communicate with the public. Why? Because it has become more personalized. There is now diversity with the advent of social media. my office is having that code at the moment, because we are transitioning from a traditional way of communicating where you just call a press conference and off you go. We are now moving away from just text to video and audio and other ways that we are consuming news. It's amazing how we are able to consume information without necessarily having to log in at a TV in the evening when everyone was supposed to be watching news. No, it's no longer the case. Then the rise of algorithms and the creation of what I can call cocoons. Somebody may call them communities of how you consume information based on preferences, which is a very good thing, because then you are able to have tailor-made kind of market. But the challenge with that also, it also precludes you ideally from knowing what is happening. So it also can be a very good ground for breeding ignorance or radicalizing people, and that's very dangerous, especially for those of us who are trying to create awareness and to advocate for people to understand us better. But at the same time, of course, there's innumerable opportunity that just when you are in your room, you can go to TikTok and create content and create awareness on whatever subject it is that you would want to speak about. So I think that is something that we are grappling with: mass distribution of content, ensuring that it is right, fighting against misinformation and disinformation, fake news. Going forward. So it's a very challenging moment going forward. And so we cannot therefore afford to ensure that we bring on board the concerns, the needs and aspirations of persons with disabilities as we try to create this new reality. Especially now, the fact that we are dealing with artificial intelligence, the AI. What do we need to train models to understand matters to do with disability, so that body of knowledge that rises to actually create virtual realities, it also speaks positively of the experiences, needs and concerns, and indeed contributions of persons with disabilities in society. And going forward, in terms of ensuring that whatever inventions and innovations that are created are really amenable to what we would require in terms of shaping a new future. Ensuring that, for example, we have platforms that create advantages to those of us with disabilities in terms of the content that they are creating and monetizing it, for example, so that they are able to be independent going forward. The use of personal data and information, how is it private, in terms of ensuring that some of the details that may be relating to one's disability are not just flashed out there because they are available online. So there are many subjects. It's a really wide field. And so I'm welcoming us today to think critically as we are going to our breakouts of how we can create good guidelines that not necessarily just speak to ourselves, that enhance communication in general, but become therefore a point of reference. And I'm very happy that there are these standards that have been created by the Kenya National Bureau of Standards, but they have not been, Kenya Bureau of Standards, they have not been popularized enough. How do we create fora? How do we create partnerships? How do we, pull together resources so that then we are able to inform and educate, entertain with a lens of disability? So, ladies and gentlemen, really, it is important to have persons with disabilities in certain offices, because if I wasn't the government spokesperson, take it from me, we will not be having this forum today, isn't it? Yeah, because you carry your tribe with you. You carry your people with you. So let's take the advantage, as long as I'm the government spokesman, and please pray for me. Changes keep on changing, but I am there. And there are ones that were made yesterday, and we are survived and we are here, we thank God. So that then we become the epicenter of pushing this program. But we are not going to do it alone. Tabi, we would want even not just, we would want to sit down and see, is it possible for Safaricom to resource? Because we are the biggest profit-making company in this country, What is it that we can pull together? I know you have many requirements, but there's something that we can do, How do we create champions, Nasongo, that we can actually, award because of the work that they have been able to do? How do we leverage on international connections, Linda, Waridi, in terms of those partnerships that you have created with big corporates like Clinton Foundation and the others that fund your programs, and how do we ensure that it percolates to the village so that the one with disability, without necessarily telling the other villagers, they know how to ensure that they are communicating with that person effectively. So we have this, and if we are able to carry everything in communications, we'll be able to move forward. Kenya is a great country, and I stand here as a patriot. I was having a conversation with the personal assistant to the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and they are keen on coming to do a state visit to look at what we are doing. So, Dr. Kabue, that's something that I would want to ask our sector to help us so that they come and audit what we have been able to do, because we've been cited as a best practice in Sub-Saharan Africa, in the global south, so that then we are able to showcase. And it would be very important that when they come, when the UN comes to see what we have been able to do, then we showcase that in this issue of communication, as per Article 9 of the CRPD, we have something to report. Yeah, we have something to report, not the usual, the mundane, but also the innovations going forward. So, Simon, you have your work cut out in helping us to think through, going forward. So, with those many and few remarks, I want to say thank you. And after I finish, we'll have the next speaker, and then we do a photo session. We have tea break, and then we come to the real work. So, allow me now to welcome a gentleman that I met some times back in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He, at that point in time, was working in Uganda under the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. The Konrad Adenauer Stiftung is a German political foundation, and they seem to have precipitated a crisis to the extent that they have gotten into power earlier than they were expecting. So they are the ruling coalition in Germany. They are still negotiating for that. And this foundation has worked with me since 2009. In fact, they sponsored my first publication or book called Human Rights, Disability and Development in Kenya, a Discourse, and I was pleasantly surprised to learn that it's still being used as a reference material. Maybe we need to do a second edition. Konrad Adenauer Stiftung has done a lot of work in terms of the rule of law, in terms of promoting democracy, has worked with many political parties, is a center-right political party, just like my party, UDA. Sometimes we can argue about the issue of political ideology, but sometimes we espouse those political ideologies with our local politics and dynamics. And I've written quite some pieces about it because I think also we have our own local political ideologies. But largely, yes, the world gravitates whether left or right, or the dynamic center. So Konrad was kind enough, to work with my office and to come up with this partnership so that we can move forward. So with those many and few remarks, I would want to welcome Dr. Matthias Kemp to come and address us. He's also our in-law because he's married from Kenya. Karibu. Now, I want us to do the Kanu way. So you know the Kanu way? Those of you who were born before 2002. Yeah. So moja, mbili, tatu, funga, fungua, funguka.
Asante sana, ndugu Isaac. Good morning, everyone. I was introduced already. My name is Matthias Kamp, Country Director for the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, but I think I'm a little less known here than my previous speakers. So maybe for those who are visually impaired, I'm a middle-aged white man with a beard and spectacles. Isaac said a bit about the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I think one thing that's very good in the German context, and I'm not giving you a lecture about the German democracy, but we are very happy now that the political party that we are affiliated with as a political foundation will be leading the future government coalition in Germany. But even as our party was in opposition, it did not affect our work here, because imagine we are affiliated with the opposition, but we still get our funding from the German government. Whether or not we are in government, it does not matter, because the understanding is we all contribute to the same cause when it comes to promoting democracy. And so we have that role that we can always play regardless of what is happening in the competitive politics. We have our constitution, it's strong, and we can always carry out our work. Even if we are defeated in elections, we are not punished by the government, and they will not close the tap on us, so that we can always continue our work. I think that's quite important to emphasize, much as we are now looking forward to the new German government. And I think the new government will have a keen interest on cooperating well with Kenya and with the current Kenyan government, and we've done a bit of groundwork for that, so we are keenly following that as well. Now, as a political foundation, our engagement is very much about the promotion of democratic governance. And ultimately, when we're talking about democracy, it's power of the people, right? The people hold the power. Now, that's very difficult to always implement to the full extent. It's when you make decisions in your family, maybe that's easy. We all do it together. The moment you reach a certain scale, you have to work with mechanisms that translate that power. So you need to work through mechanisms of delegation, of representation. And then the aspect of inclusion is very, very crucial. But it's also much harder the more you move to a larger scale. So inclusion is easier to implement in your family, in your local community maybe. The moment you're talking about regional, national issues through mechanisms of delegation, of representation, inclusion is much harder to implement, and something that has to be worked towards. And as Dr. Kabue said, it's a process. So also, as we meet today, I look at this as a milestone, and we are very, very grateful and also proud to be cooperating with Isaac's office, with the office of the government spokesperson. Thank you for putting this together, and thank you for being open for the partnership with us. But as I said, it's an ongoing process. I think, Tabi, you said it, it's more than that, it's work, it's hard work. Ni kazi ngumu. So when there's hard work, you have to join hands. Kufanya kazi pamoja. So this is why I think it's important that we have meetings like this, where all these key stakeholders come together, and we can really mark a big leap forward in this ongoing process. Because as I said, when we talk about national politics, inclusion is a very tricky affair. Of course, you have an advantage over many other countries, because when you talk about the process of delegating power, it's all about people having choices. Now, people in Kenya do have choices, because you have genuine political competition, and you have a vibrant public discourse, and people debate and so on. Sometimes I wish the choices were a little less focused on individual people and more on ideologies, policies, alternatives, but that's another journey where we are also working together and walking that path together with many Kenyan stakeholders. But talking about choices, then we end up talking about what's a prerequisite for people making choices. It's information. You want an informed citizenry that can make informed choices. And in order to make informed choices, one key ingredient is having access to information. People need to be aware of what choices they have, how they can exercise their power, how they can speak out, how their interests can be reflected also in policy making, and therefore access to information is a key ingredient in a democracy. And if that information is not inclusive, we will not get the kind of governance that reflects the will and the interests of all people, including people with disability. So we need to talk about the barriers that need to be removed to make access to information a reality and a basic foundation for people exercising their rights when it comes to political choices. I think we are talking about at least 4 dimensions there. We are talking about attitudes. Some of the barriers we find would could easily be removed if only people had a different thinking and a different attitude about it. We are talking about laws. And we heard about the national disability policy, other policies as well, but beyond the laws, we are talking about practice. And Samuel gave us some very good examples of how there is often still a gap between what is in the law and what is practically applied. And we also heard about a fourth dimension, which is technology. So the technology that can facilitate processes and that can also help us remove barriers. If I look at my brother Isaac here as a trailblazer, as someone who's spearheading the process, I think you embody and you cover a lot of those areas. You are a thinker, you're a legislator, you're a practitioner. I don't know to what extent you're a technician as well. So one thing that maybe we also, and it got me thinking, and I actually ended up speaking longer than I thought. You know, when you speak last, it's sometimes a problem. You come and say, I'll just say some quick opening remarks. Then you listen to so many people already who inspire you and inspire your thinking. So one thing I wanted to say is we need to also look at the technical side and the people who drive innovation and technology and get those people who drive the technology and the innovation to understand the issue of inclusion of people with disability. Because those worlds might not always meet. And if we look at technological advancement, it might have a certain bias. Because if you're not affected yourself, you might not think about the necessary solutions. And also, from an economic perspective, the profit is where you have the mass market. Now, the very specific needs of people with disability might not be a mass market, so you might not naturally be driven towards innovating in those spaces. So Isaac, as we leave here, I also want to have a conversation about taking this to Silicon Savannah and getting young, innovative entrepreneurs to drive technological solutions to also help us on that journey. So with those few remarks, thank you again, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Ndugu Isaac, for spearheading this process. Thank you to your entire team at the Office of the Government Spokesperson. Thank you to the Kenyan government. And thank you to all the stakeholders who are here today and making this possible. And I wish you fruitful deliberations and good outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such an insightful speech and an insightful session. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our first session. After this, we are going to have a photo shoot right outside. We will walk outside and turn right at the parking. We are going to have a quick photo session with everybody, and then after that, we are going to go for a short tea break. Tea will be served on first floor on the left. Once you alight from the lift, on the left of the staircase. Thank you very much. My team will help me coordinate the photo session, the OGS team.